isn't big stories in the news. Some of the biggest are happening right now as we head into the inauguration of President Trump, as we deal with these Palisade fires and the Democrats just absolutely dropping the ball for people in California. To help me go through all this, I have Maureen Callahan from Daily Mail. Thank you so much, Maureen, for joining me.
Thanks for having me back, Stephen.
So just some background. Maureen is a journalist, writer, author, many articles on Daily Mail. She also authored the book, Ask Not, The Kennedys and the Women They Destroyed. Maureen, help me understand this. These are Biden's actions. Maui, Hawaii, deals with these horrible fires, grossly mismanaged by government, and the people get $700 per house. And then they send money off to Ukraine. North Carolina is offered a $750 government loan. And then DHS head Alejandro Mayorkas announces FEMA's run out of money. At the end of that week, they send more money to Ukraine. Now we have the California fires, grossly mismanaged again by government. And Biden announces $500 million to hold Ukraine over, and the federal government will cover the costs of California for 180 days. What is the real message that Democrats and President Biden is giving to the American people?
I mean, it's one of complete mismanagement and a complete abandonment and dereliction of duty. You see it from the very top with Biden down to the very bottom. When you look at what's going on in Los Angeles right now, this should not be happening. The absolute uncontainment of these fires for days on end. You have an LA fire chief who was laudably covered by local news for being the first female, the first openly gay female head of the fire department. She's getting interviewed about her diversity, equity, and inclusion project, that's her top priority. She proudly announces she sent LA Fire Department gear to Ukraine. And it's all about this kind of virtue signaling when LA has fire hydrants that have zero water, that have federally funded reservoirs that contain zero water, that do not do what a 30-year study just published by UC Berkeley, it was either 20 or 30 years, but said in order to keep California habitable for humans, you need to clear these forests, you need to do contained burns. And, you know, my favorite clip maybe of the past day or so, seeing Gavin Newsom run away from an outraged LA mom, peppering him with questions and holding his feet to the proverbial fire.
Yeah. Wow. I saw, I don't know the name of the magazine, but it was basically like a pro LGBTQ magazine. And it was lauding this woman that you described, the fire chief there, about how she had done so many incredible things. And then next to it was breaking news, 0% of the LA fires contained. And I was like, oh my gosh, the juxtaposition of she's amazing and 0% of the fires contained. I was like, it's just crazy to me, the world that we're living in right now.
Do you know what's a truly incredible thing that a firefighter can do? Put out a fire, run into a burning building to save people they don't know from harm they never saw coming or were unprepared for. So this is ridiculous. And I think what's going to happen, and we're seeing it now with this sort of melting down of many formerly proudly left-leaning celebrities who live there or lived there, is a complete repudiation of these leftist, progressive, DEI, woke politicians and policies that have left their city in literal ruins.
Yeah. I was at a couple nights ago, I was at a 5-hour mastermind group. I pay to be a part of this entrepreneur group. And there was a quote that said, success and money covers a host of problems. And I've been thinking about that from both sides. Like, okay, if you have money, it might keep you from a marriage falling apart, right? Or it might keep you from seeing the things that you need to change in your life. and I can't help wonder, like with these Hollywood celebrities, if like they've just been completely blind to how bad things are in California because they have money and that they'll be able to get through this. But now that so much of their life has just been burned right before their eyes, they're going, oh, wait a minute. What's the real problem here? It's the government. It's the Democrat-led city. And I just wonder if Adam Carolla, who's been saying, we're about to see blue people go red, Democrat leaders replaced with Republican leaders. I can't help but wonder if there's some truth to that.
I think there is some truth to that. And I think you're seeing it right now. I mean, in New York, for example, Manhattan, parts of which went red in ways they have never gone before. The Lower East Side in Manhattan went completely red and voted for Donald Trump. That is a multi-ethnic group of people who range from wealthy to poor. In New York, people are holding on and waiting for Trump to come in because they hope he's going to be able to do what he says in squashing this congestion pricing, which the governor just put into place and which is squeezing people dry. Okay. And I think in LA, you're going to see the same exact thing where you're looking at Gavin Newsom, it's amazing to me he hasn't already been recalled. You know, I look at this guy and I think this is the guy who was caught dining at the French Laundry, starting per person price $400 just to take a seat there during the height of COVID lockdown while he was preaching to everybody else. They had to stay home and go nowhere. That's him. That's Gavin Newsom in a nutshell. And that's these policies and politicians in a nutshell. And I think once the trauma of this really sets in, I think people are going to look hard. In fact, I would love to see him recalled. I would love to see this disgrace of a mayor, Karen Bass, who was in Ghana for reasons known only between her and her God. I have no idea what the F she was doing there. She had been briefed. These fires were coming. It wasn't a matter of if, it was when, how many hours. She went to Ghana. She comes back, she lands, she's peppered for 2 straight minutes with questions. And she stands there, Stephen, like with her brows knitted, looking like she kind of doesn't comprehend the questions that are being asked of her. You know, it's amazing. And it's the kind of incompetence you saw writ large when they shoved Kamala Harris out there and said she could do it. She could do the job. Could you imagine if she were the incoming president right now?
No. You know, they kept wondering, like, okay, what are her talking points? What does she really stand for? Can she deal with foreign wars? Can she deal with emergencies? And I'm just watching her and Biden, and they're just like frozen. They don't know what to do. So of course they're going to throw money at the problem. Why do you think they're not willing to help the Democrats in Hawaii, and they're not willing to help the Democrats and the people of North Carolina, but they're willing to help the people of Ukraine and the people of Hollywood? I guess I don't understand the selective blessing of financial assistance.
You know, I don't understand. I don't know that if Biden were, say, in the middle of a term rather than exiting, that he would necessarily be displaying such largesse either. I think with Biden, there will be no shortage of books written about this term and then the final year and the final days. He seems intent on being self-governed by his own bitterness and resentment that he was pushed aside, as does Jill. There have been reports from inside the administration that he's intent on, quote, burning it all down to the ground, to use a painfully apt metaphor. And the Ukraine thing it's just pure virtue signaling. You know, again, this is the party that was screaming threat to democracy, and Ukraine is sort of bound up in that narrative. But to then see yesterday Donald Trump sitting next to Barack Obama, who was smiling, laughing, and seemed charmed by whatever Trump was whispering in his ear, just gave the lie to that entire line they were trying to sell to the American people, that Donald Trump was the true threat to democracy. You have got to be kidding me.
Yeah. He certainly is charming, right? Like he goes to the Notre Dame reopening, and Jill Biden is just like falling over herself, smiling at him and laughing. And then they're
Well, that's an FU to Kamala too, by the way.
yes, I know.
Forgive.
Oh, did you see when Jill Biden sat down by Kamala at the Carter funeral? I mean, there was like no communication. They both turned. There's bitter feelings between these two women.
You know, it's so funny. I was talking to somebody about this morning, and the emotional maturity level of Joe Biden, Jill Biden, and Kamala Harris is equally matched. I would put it at about age 13, because I watched Kamala turn and look behind her at Trump and Obama engaged in this most friendly conversation, turned her head back and make a face. That's statesman-like behavior. That's what you want to see from the most powerful people in the world who belong to the most exclusive club on the planet at a presidential funeral.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I've been seeing on Twitter, which is kind of funny, is like, they called Trump Hitler so many times, and here's Barack Obama smiling, whispering with Hitler, laughing at Hitler's jokes. It's like he was never a threat to democracy. He was a threat to bureaucracy and their ability to remain in power. I want to throw out an idea of why Biden might be throwing so much money at Hollywood in California, but not at North Carolina and not at the people of Hawaii, is Democrats can't afford to lose the largest electoral voting state, because if they lose California, Republicans win forever. That was a thought that I had, is he's basically like, oh crap, we have to financially assist our biggest electoral voting bloc. That was a thought that I had.
I mean, that's a valid thought. I think it's far too late. I think it's far too little, far too late. When I see these people, these rich, famous people on Instagram and elsewhere shouting down the likes of Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass and saying that these leftist progressive policies have utterly failed them, which, hello, yes, they have. And you're seeing that in real time. You're seeing the actual practical applications of those failed policies. I think this country, I think the election of Trump, I always thought this, they used to talk about during that election cycle, there's a hidden Kamala voter. There's the silent Kamala voter. And I thought, no, there remains the silent Trump voter. And I don't think that a Democratic led California exists after this in the near term. The other thing that Biden is facing down, and it couldn't happen to a worse, I think his character, I've never thought he was a decent person. I think he's a terrible person and always has been. But his mega donors, the Jeffrey Katzenbergs of the world and the like, they are so pissed at him for what he did in getting what they see as Trump elected, that they're not funding his presidential library. Those wallets have closed. So he is going to walk away from the only thing he's ever wanted, the office of the presidency, in total disgrace. And I do believe he will go down as a minor figure in American history.
Yeah, I completely agree. Speaking of closing wallets, my other thought of why he's bailing out Hollywood specifically is Democrats don't win elections without Hollywood.
But they did. They just did. They had every celebrity going from Oprah on down. They had that star-studded DNC. And guess what? America said F you to celebrities. We don't want Hollywood telling us who and how to vote. F off.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I still think he's trying to buy off their future allegiance because he knows that they are pissed. But I agree. I think the general public said, we don't care about your endorsements. Now we find out they're paid endorsements. Like, whatever Hollywood thinks, we don't really care. Just make movies that don't make us feel icky. And like, that's all I care about from you. But I just can't. I keep trying to figure out why he's willing to cover the costs of everything for 180 days, but people in Hawaii and North Carolina get $700. It just, I guess
it's almost meaningless, though, I think, Stephen, because he's not going to be president in 10 more days. Trump's going to come in and Trump's going to get it done. And the recovery of Los Angeles, I was thinking about this last night because, LA is slated to host the 2028 Olympics. And I think that Donald Trump is going to make certain that LA is built back by 2028 to host the Olympics, because that is going to be a capstone on his term. I think he is highly incentivized to do so.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. You were telling me something off camera about Mandy Moore, who's like a multi-decamillionaire begging for money and then telling her people, if you don't want to help me, then F you. Tell my audience about that.
This story, if anyone in your audience hasn't seen this story, Google it immediately, because you will not believe the unmitigated gall. And this is who these people are. This is exactly why America put them in their rearview mirror during this election cycle. It's almost like anything they tell us to do, we are absolutely going to do the opposite. Mandy Moore, a mediocre talent at best. America made her a multimillionaire with that treacly, sappy, overly sentimental melodrama called This Is Us, in which she spent a good portion of it in terrible aging makeup. That's just an aside. She got, I'm going to say, a total of a reported $23 million over that 7-season show. So that's just part of her pie. And if you think about that money and what it generates for her in terms of passive income, the money she makes while she sleeps, this woman never has to work another day in her life. She can support her family. They can live like royalty. She puts an Instagram post up asking for her followers to donate money to her brother-in-law and her sister-in-law. They're looking for $60K, which for Mandy Moore, that's change in the couch cushions, okay? And then she goes on to say, for anybody who has a problem with this, first of all, not my idea. My friend Matt put this up. Well, you're posting about it, honey. So it's your problem now too, okay? And then she says, comments asking about why wealthy people should be asking for money are, quote, not helpful or empathetic. To which I say, of course they're not helpful or empathetic, Mandy. That's the freaking point. You're an asshole. You are an overprivileged, out of touch, tone deaf, greedy asshole. And then she says, for anybody who doesn't like this, you can kindly F off. That's what she thinks of the little people. Make no mistake. And she is not alone.
Yeah. Wow. This kind of reminds me of what's that girl from Who's the Boss? Melissa Alano or Alyssa
Milano?
Yes. Same thing. About a year ago, she was trying to raise like $1,000 for her son's Little League game.
I remember that.
Yeah. And everybody came out, and instead of saying, listen, we have the money to do this, but we're trying to teach our children the value of money and asking for things and raising, because they're not wealthy. We're wealthy. Instead it was just like, help me. And man, her fans, the backlash was like, are you kidding me? You have so much freaking money compared to us. But yeah, for Mandy Moore, who is kind of known as a sweet person,
not
to
anymore.
come out and be like,
not anymore.
Yeah, to come out and be like, if you don't give me money, then F you. It's like, oof, ouch.
Why don't you take that anger and rage and direct it at the people responsible, namely Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass and Joe Biden? Why don't you do that? Okay. Instead of asking people who have lost everything, most people devastated by this fire, their lives will never be the same again. My mom lost her home in Hurricane Sandy. You know how long that took to get her back on her feet? It took years. And that's with the quote unquote help of federal, state, and local government. So she really, what I most profoundly truly wish for her is that this is a reputational extinction level event for her, and that the only money she's got coming in is whatever's coming in from her investments, that she never gets hired again. Because I personally don't want to see her.
Yeah. I think it's just so hard for people to relate. Remember during the Johnny Depp and Heather, what's her name?
Are you thinking about Amber Heard?
Amber Heard, sorry. I knew it was a H-E something, so Heard, not Heather. Amber Heard. And he's like, yeah, I have over 20 houses, and most of them are empty. So I have to let friends live there so that someone will take care of the house. It's like, man, you got all these people that are like trying to pay rent, get a down payment for a house. Their mortgage rates went up, so their payments went up. And this guy's like, I have so many houses that I literally have to let friends live there so that they don't deteriorate. I mean, the level of wealth among these people is just unimaginable to the majority of Americans. Going back to Gavin Newsom, does this completely destroy his career? Any run for president in the future, they will always bring up the fact that he demonstrably failed his voters, his constituents, the people that depend on him? Or can he clean up his image? Can Nancy Pelosi use her insider trading money to polish this turd? What are your thoughts on him?
I think he's done. I never thought he had a chance at the presidency. He's way too slick. He's way too facile and slippery and kind of slimy. I think the Brill creamed hair is the sort of metaphorical representation of who he is as a person and a politician. I don't know how you recover from, if LA exists after this weekend, I'll be shocked if like any part of it really exists. We're watching a major American city that maintains a place in the American psyche like no other, needlessly burned to the ground. And this guy can't even face a local constituent. He's got a fake being on the phone with Joe Biden. He is done. And by the way, mentioning Nancy Pelosi, who is the epitome of the gerontocracy in this country. You broke a hip. Go, leave. You're 84. Leave the future to people who have a vested interest in how it plays out because they will be alive to see it. You will not.
Yeah. It's my belief that she's not staying in to represent the people of San Francisco, but to cover her family crimes of, getting a net worth of over $200 million while being a public servant. But that's just
I couldn't agree with you more. This to me is one of the greatest unreported scandals in modern American political history. How Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi built their wealth, but they're zero without insider trading. Are you freaking kidding me? I cannot believe it. The same way in which the media kind of really soft pedaled that extremely strange home invasion. We're not supposed to talk about it. It's supposed to be sacrosanct because it's her husband. She's the elected official. Leave it alone. It was extremely strange, but there we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Senator Bernie Sanders said, I've spent a lot of time in Los Angeles. It's an extraordinarily beautiful place. Watching LA burn is extremely painful. The footage is nothing short of apocalyptic. I am deeply sad for the people of this wonderful city. We need climate change now. What does he mean, climate action, climate change? Does he mean that they should bring in goats to eat up the dry brush that catches on fire? Does he mean acknowledging that removing dams that held water on the land was a bad idea by Gavin Newsom? Does he mean actively preventing hundreds of millions of gallons that flow away from Los Angeles into the Pacific Ocean should be rerouted? And that way LA, that's always complaining about drought, has so much water. There's such an abundance of water. Like, I can't wrap my head around what he's talking about with climate action when all of the climate action they could have taken would have prevented this very event.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know what he means either. That is a malformed thought. And again, it's uttered by a member of the gerontocracy. It's way past time for these people to go. Way past time. We have the finest minds in America. And it's interesting to watch Trump staff up with people like Elon Musk and Vivek, people who can take their enormous brains and apply it to neglected problems like, say, the state of California, which, as Joan Didion wrote back in, I think, the 60s, always reminds its inhabitants that it really doesn't want people there, right? Like earthquakes, mudslides, for wildfires, like it is an extremely difficult place for human habitation. So if we're going to insist that people are going to live there, just as on the East Coast, very wealthy people insist on living in places that are very prone to floods and beach erosion, then we have to make it practical and we have to apply practical solutions to this problem. What is happening to California, it lies at the feet of the Democrats from local to federal.
All right. My hope and prayer is with the people of California, but I want to hit a different topic here. Biden's acting director of ICE blasted the sitting president and blamed him for the illegal immigrant crisis during his exit interview. He said Biden should have taken action sooner. He shouldn't have held ICE back from doing their job and should have used executive power sooner. Will Biden go down as one of America's worst presidents? And can Trump jump in and fix the border and the illegal immigrant crisis?
First of all, this statement is infuriating because it's too little too late. The time to make that statement was while you had a chance at moving the needle. You make a public, loud, angry resignation. You say this president and his administration are falling down on the job. You can no longer serve. This guy was happy to pocket his paychecks and look the other way until the time has come for him to be naturally out of a job. So spare me and save it. Biden, as I said earlier, I believe will go down as a minor figure and one of the worst, if not the worst president in modern American history. Trump was elected in large part to secure the border, to deport illegals, the worst of the worst, first and foremost. Tom Homan, I love this guy. As someone who has been a lifelong resident of New York and has seen what has happened to it under the Biden administration, under these sanctuary city laws. And now you're seeing our mayor, Eric Adams, who once was like, sure, come on in. And now the city is strained to the point of being broken, saying he can't wait to partner with Tom Homan and ICE and President Trump to get these migrants out of New York City.
Yeah. Oh, it's Charlie Kirk wrote, every time they arrest somebody or go to remove them, or there's a mother or a child, the mainstream media is going to glom onto that and try to make everybody lose the focus of taking the country back and making it safe. I believe that Trump and Tom Homan, they've got the back, they've got the courage to move through this. Hopefully the American people do as well. And we can get that. But I agree. Like, you waited till your exit interview to say what a piece of crap this guy is and how he literally single-handedly was behind the cause of most of your problems. And you don't say anything until you go off into retirement. I don't know. It just something doesn't sit right about that. Okay, this has been a mystery to me, is watching Mark Zuckerberg. I cannot tell if this guy is genuine, if he is in self-preservation mode, if he has figured this is now the time to get out from the thumb of the government. But Mark Zuckerberg said in an interview this week that the FBI and the federal government were exerting tremendous force on him at Facebook to take down people and posts, even when their information was true. He then gives the example of having to take down COVID and vaccine damage information that he knew was true, but didn't line up with the government narrative. Should the people behind this pressure campaign be investigated and held accountable? And do you think that Zuckerberg is genuine in trying to get out from under control of the government, or is this just self-preservation?
I find Mark Zuckerberg to be an unreliable narrator. This is a guy who decides when he's going to show up, when Congress calls on him to testify at hearings. Remember that very famous photo of the empty chair with the nameplate Zuckerberg in front of it? And he just was like, F you, I'm not showing up. The tech guys are the guys who really run things. It's not the government. It's the tech guys. It was Facebook who refused to, they cut off the New York Post account when the Hunter Biden laptop story surfaced. They choked that off. They determined, I don't like this. I don't believe him. They determine to a large degree what news we consume. And to your point earlier about Charlie Kirk's fear that once the mainstream media starts, selectively editing footage of migrant families being split up, the good news here is that Americans increasingly do not believe or trust the mainstream media. As well, they should not. And you shouldn't trust Mark Zuckerberg. and you shouldn't trust any of these people. They've all got their hands in each other's pockets. They all know where everybody's bodies are buried. So you can spare me that. I don't buy it for a second.
Yeah, it's like when someone burns you so many times, then you just go, okay, now you say you're not going to do what you've been doing over and over again. I don't know. To me, it seems like self-preservation. He's been looking for a way to become more like X, and he's going to take this opportunity. But I just don't know that it's genuine. Maureen, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on and help me and my audience better understand stories. I'm going to put a link to your Daily Mail articles, as well as your book over on Amazon, so that people can check that out. If people want to follow you online, should I push them to Twitter or just Daily Mail?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. You can find me there. And Stephen, thanks again for having me back. It was such a fun conversation. It flew. And I'm sorry if I sounded angry today, but there is so much that is just infuriating about this news cycle. And my thoughts are, as most Americans, are with the people of California as they get through this.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of your day.